Bat music.
He's not a bat, he's a man who fights crime. And we're gonna watch him fight for a minute at a time. With John and Niall and a guest who doesn't rhyme. It's Bat Minutes!
Hello, and welcome once again to Bat Minutes Returns, the podcast where we mustn't get sidetracked, Maxie. We've got our own things to attend to, such as looking at Tim Burton's 1992 Batman sequel, Batman Returns, 1 minute at a time. I am one of the hosts, Niall McGowan.
And I am the other host with the enormous parasol, John Parker.
And actually, I forgot we didn't do a discussion of how you want to be introduced, Jarf. Like, which way would you... You can just introduce yourself now, I guess, if I'd be handy.
Yeah. Hey, this is Jarf. Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the podcast, and I love this movie. It's one of my faves, so
Yes.
I'm really excited to talk about it, and this scene in particular.
Well, thanks for coming on. And of course, yeah, this scene in particular, or this minute in particular, is minute 54, which begins with the Penguin prattling on about his parasol. And it ends 1 minute later with him accepting an offer he can't refuse. And so, what could that be? But yeah, we're still mid Oswald's tirade here, and I need you, Oswald. I need you now. And that's the biggest parasol I've ever seen. And the thing is, again, much like the whole I like to fill her void. And the previous minute, when I was a kid, I was just like, I guess he just likes. A parasol is an umbrella, although it's technically an umbrella for the sun rather than the rain. I think it's the distinct difference. And it was just like, I guess maybe if you're mayor, they'll give him a big parasol, and that's what he's talking about. But now it's like, no, that is not what he's talking about.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I didn't understand that was a dirty joke, a blue joke. I thought he just wanted a big umbrella. Like, who doesn't?
That's the reward you get for being mayor, is you get the giant umbrella and a giant key to the city. That's how people know you're mayor.
And listeners, don't you just love this image of like little Niall and little John there in the theaters with their candy and their popcorn and their dewy-eyed innocent expressions? It's the biggest parasol. Oh, lucky penguin.
I want one of those. If only I knew.
I actually do wonder as well, though, that why did they choose the word parasol, though? Because it's like, the Penguin's known for umbrellas. A parasol is just an umbrella, but it's just for the sun. But I wonder if there was discussions like, no, parasol's funnier. If he says, that's the biggest umbrella I've ever seen, it just doesn't, it doesn't pop as much, I guess? Or what was the discussion they had there?
I think you're right. I think it is just that parasol is a little bit funnier.
Yeah. It's more amusing. And I'm going to be honest, you might have to edit this now. I think it's because it sounds closer to penis.
Yeah, that's true. That's true enough, yeah.
It's got the P sound at the start. It's meant to make you go, oh, what's he going to say? Oh, he said parasol.
I guess, they could have delivered it differently. Have been like, that's the biggest P. Well, actually, you can't really.
You can't really drag the P out.
Yeah, it is just like, this doesn't work.
I think that's the closest they could get, to be honest. But is this sad? I decided from this scene I was going to look into the history of the umbrella.
Oh, that's what the show is for, John.
Yeah, well,
so yeah, go right ahead.
I mean, obviously they don't know fully, but the parasol did come first. Seemingly,
like that they didn't know the history of the pen. Like, umbrellas just showed up one day. Like, people went out and there was just umbrellas in their living rooms, and they're like, I guess we're just, we have these now.
That's like a horror movie. You'd come home and there's just umbrellas standing there. Like,
it's like Night of the Umbrellas. And then its sequel, Day of the Parasol.
But they believe that the basic umbrella, well, it's technically, again, a parasol, but they're using the words interchangeably, was invented over 4,000 years ago. And there's evidence of it in art from Egypt to Syria, Greece, China. And they were specifically for the sun. So, yeah, the parasol comes first.
Oh, hold up. That's interesting. But that does make more sense. Because getting rained on is just a nuisance. Whereas
Yeah,
the
it doesn't
sun
like kill you.
in excess will kill you. Yeah, okay. Cool.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, I think. Yeah, and I'm a fan of the parasol. I think they're underused today. I'd like to see them make a comeback.
Yeah, you don't really see, like, except for people on the beach with the giant things that are just there for the parasol, literally for the shade. But you don't see people walking around with them anymore, which is like, why not? Because so the sun, you have sunscreen, but still, that's not infallible. Why not have the extra protection? But
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And then I went to another website, katetattersall.com. And that had some more history because it went further. It went more modern, and it said they were brought to Europe during the Italian Renaissance. That's when they were first introduced to Europe, and they were large and carried by servants to protect you from the sun. Again, so more sun stuff, which makes sense. Again, Italy can be quite a sunny, warm kind of place. But in the 1700s, they became a ladies' fashion item. So they went to women first. I assumed it would be men. I don't know why. I think because Victorian men always carry an umbrella. But then in the 1800s, they were made collapsible, thus allowing the penguin to have his weapon of choice.
So before they're collapsible, so it was just always a fully formed umbrella wherever you went.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how annoying.
Yeah, like you have to like leave them outside and stuff, wouldn't you? You could, unless everyone had extra wide doors or something.
Maybe there was like a parking space for the umbrella rather than a car.
Yeah, now I'm just imagining, if anyone ever has like an episode of like Doctor Who or something, like, oh, they've gone back to this era. It's like, writing in the BBC going like, they should have had umbrellas outside every house because you couldn't collapse them then. So historically inaccurate Doctor Who that you couldn't take umbrellas inside at that time. Plus the Cybermen never took over Victorian London in that era.
I thought they did. Oh, my life is a lie.
I would have just a little hook on the outside of my house so I could just hang up the umbrella upside down on the hook.
Yeah, that'd be a great idea. Maybe that was a thing. I've never seen this. I'm an amateur historian. You think I would know? I didn't know. I'm doing a history degree in my spare time because I'm a sadist, and I didn't know this.
So you're going like into your tutor now, and it's like, oh, John, do you have a dissertation pitch? And you're just like, one word. Umbrellas.
Yes. I've been struggling to think about what I'm going to do. So there you go.
Oh, it's just popped up. There you go. The history of umbrellas
just popped
through
up
time.
like an umbrella.
And then like every time you have a guest on in any minute featuring an umbrella, you're like, can you sign this document so I can use a quote that you said about the umbrella and stuff?
Just reference my own podcast.
Yeah, it's like, as they said in minute 244 of that minute. Anywho.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into too much more. I have reams of information here. All kinds of materials they were made from. They were cotton, silk, leather, zinc, all kinds of
zinc.
Stuff. Yeah, I assume that was for the alloy ribs. They were made from copper, nickel, and zinc.
Okay. I thought you just meant like a whole metal umbrella. That would
No.
I guess zinc is light though, so it actually wouldn't be that bad. But
my only other fact I will read, so I don't bore everyone, is that the Chinese ones were known as a pak tong.
Ooh.
I liked that word, pak tong.
I think in the Chinese dub of this, the penguin is like, the biggest pak dong I've ever seen.
That's even funnier.
He should have just said that with no explanation.
Yeah, there could be people going out. It's like, oh, I guess I'm going to have to look up what that is. Oh, it's an umbrella. That actually would have worked as a joke. Just been like people having to make all the effort of looking it up. And then to find out it was just an umbrella the whole time. Like, oh, damn it. You got me, Tim Burton.
We get another chance for me to flex my history buff muscles, so to speak, because Max proposes an idea here, because they want to get the mayor recalled and whatnot. So he proposes a fake incident to help out the campaign. And he compares his plan to the fire at the Reichstag.
Well, the thing, he mentions two contentious things that sparked, controversial things in history. Because he was like, oh, the Gulf of Tonkin. And then I love the way he says the Reichstag fire, because it's really as if he's like, oh, this one's going to get him. He kind of almost like prods the penguin like, the Gulf of Tonkin, the Reichstag fire. Like, oh, we can all get involved with the Reichstag fire, right?
Yes, of course. I'm sure.
Yeah, I
everybody
found
knows
that
what
to
it
be the most like dark Daniel Waters style writing
Yeah.
part
Definitely-
of
it definitely
this
feels it.
minute. The fact that Max von Schreck would kind of relish delivering that line, and that would be the clincher that wins over the thing. Oh, right, fake mayhem used to suspend civil liberties by the Nazis. Like, ooh,
Yeah, it's a good plan considering what they're trying to do. Not that I approve of it, of course, but you know, it worked for the Nazi Party. So, you know, but that's if you believe. This is the thing. If you don't know what it is, listeners, it's in reference to when the Reichstag was set ablaze, quite blatantly by the Nazis, right? Who denied it. But it was in order to be given further powers to prevent a communist revolution. So basically they could then... I've got it written down, actually. Where is it? Here we go.
It's something ridiculous. Like, they found, was it Marianus van der Lubbe? I remember the guy was called. I actually remembered from history class, because I remember not knowing what the Reichstag fire was in Batman Returns. And then when I was in secondary school history, them come in like, and then tomorrow we're going to discuss the Reichstag fire. And I was like, wait a minute, I know that term.
Finally, I will understand the movie.
raising your hand eagerly in class, like, ooh, I know that. It's from Batman Returns.
But I do remember, I think they found him, and they literally like had like a pack of matches on him or something, and they're like, "Look, he's got matches on him. He clearly is the guy who did it."
Must have been him. But the day after the fire, at Hitler's request, President Hindenburg signed the Reichstag fire decree into law, and that suspended civil liberties so they could combat the threat. So I can never pronounce this. Habeas corpus, freedom of expression, freedom of the press, the right of free association and public assembly, the secrecy of post and telephone usage. These were all suspended, and during the Nazi reign were never reinstated. Not once. I suppose they did pretty much, go almost straight into war mode. So that makes sense, I guess. But yeah, so that's his plan. Is like, let's fake some mayhem so we can get rid of the mayor and do what we want to do.
It's like, I wanted to get rid of habeas corpus, but I should have got rid of you instead.
Oh.
And just to make things perfectly clear, because growing up most of my life, I didn't think they had to be made clear, but current events here in the States have really made me feel otherwise. Nazis are bad, and you're garbage if you think otherwise.
Yes, like we've tried to avoid politics on this show, but it's hard not to when things in this movie are eerily similar to some things going on in the real world.
Right.
I think, though, like pretty much every episode has been us saying, we don't want to talk politics, and then just talking politics for like 5 minutes.
No, I get that people listen to podcasts for fun based on the fandom that they're interested in. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit measured, but there are occasional times that I like to be like, oh, right, daily reminder, like there is actually good and evil in the world.
You've got to draw the line somewhere.
But something so easily comparable as well. It's just like, it's eerie how similar some of the things are to current events that are happening in this movie. It's like, how can we not bring it up? Like, it's right there in front of us, for Christ's sake. But just for completionist sake there, too, because you handled the Reichstag fire there, John, just in case people don't know, the other incident Shrek mentions, the Gulf of Tonkin, is the event that actually sparked the direct U.S. contact in the Vietnam War. Where the USS Maddox in 1964 was out doing a signal intelligence patrol where they were attacked by 3 Vietnamese destroyers. And they fired 3 warning shots and then had to just flat out go into a full-blown battle with them. 4 Vietnamese soldiers were killed, and apparently the US sub sustained 1 single bullet wound, which was of the entire battle. They got away with 1 bullet wound. But then, because of all this, they came back to Lyndon Johnson, I believe, and then it was just like, well, we're going to have to get involved in Vietnam now, it seems. Oh. And since then, apparently there was supposed to be another Gulf of Tonkin incident, and both of them, both of their legitimacy has actually been called into question over the years about whether they actually happened and stuff, and whether that was just an excuse to get into the war and stuff. But again, we don't want to talk politics on the show. So,
and from a writing standpoint, I don't think that doubling down with both of those incidents made the argument stronger. Like, I would have gone just Reichstag fire.
Yeah.
In the previous minute as well, because Shrek's already equated, or he's already brought to mind Richard Nixon.
Right.
Because he was doing the Nixon pose, and then he mentions, like, oh, think of Nixon, and then think of you, Oswald Cobblepot, filling the void. And so you already got one negative thing from the past brought up, equated with Cobblepot's mayoral campaign, and now you've got two different things, the Gulf of Tonkin and the Reichstag fire, both things that were nefarious, but he's bringing them up as like, this is a good pitch, that we should do these things. And the fact that when he says the Reichstag fire to the Penguin, and the Penguin's reaction is like, now I'm on board with this. Like, we should do what the Nazis did.
To be fair, maybe he didn't know about the other one. Like, it's not as well known, I wouldn't think. Maybe that's from a European perspective. I'm not sure.
Well, the Penguin seems he knows what global warming is because he talked about it in the previous minute. So
yeah.
He seems to be read up in current events. This guy, I would imagine he probably knows more about it than Shrek does.
Yeah, I could see that. He does seem to spend a lot of time in the sewers reading papers and things because he knows what's going on in the real world, as it were.
Yeah, it's gonna be something like his papers are way out of date though. He currently thinks that the Reichstag fire just happened last week or something.
He's like, oh, that contemporary story. Okay, yes, I understand.
I could see the Penguin particularly honing in on conspiracy theories because he's all about, what you flushed down your toilet, he puts on his mantle, right? And so he would be the one to kind of dig into it, like not just the news. Yeah, if there had been the internet right then, he would be all over those like conspiracy websites.
That would have been great. I'd love to see that. I mean, he kind of does have information on a conspiracy that Max is undertaking.
Yeah,
because he's been dumping all the toxic waste and whatnot here. He knows. He's in on it. He's discovered it.
I do wonder if they did this movie now, whether the Penguin would have been like stealing people's Wi-Fi in the sewers and stuff.
That'd be amazing.
Having like create hotspots by like open grates and stuff.
Oh, I don't want them to remake this movie, but if they did that, I would be on board. So.
I was going to ask, and I wasn't sure if it would lead to an interesting discussion or not, because when I tried to imagine it myself, I got really stuck. But if they remade a Batman movie with the Penguin, like who could you imagine as the Penguin? And how could you imagine the Penguin being depicted? And I don't know. I'm not usually one to say like, you can't redo it, because I'm always down for a fresh take on things. Yeah. But man, Danny DeVito's Penguin, like plus Tim Burton, it's just hard to imagine a different take being at all interesting.
I think that's the problem. Like any other take you do would be like, well, let's make him just like a serious gangster again. And it's like, well, we don't need that.
I remember the time during like between movies with the Nolan films, there was a lot of talk of like, who are they going to get in? It's like, we know the Joker's popped up and all this business, but who will be the secondary villains and stuff? I remember there was always talk of Philip Seymour Hoffman playing the Penguin, and he was supposed to be played as an arms dealer, which, but at the time I was like, that sounds pretty boring. If he's just a guy, because like, the Batman Begins is, you have the Scarecrow and you have Ra's al Ghul, who is in himself a very interesting villain. But then they would go like, oh yeah, we're going to sidetrack the Joker by adding in Philip Seymour Hoffman as an arms dealer. It's like, I'd rather just have the Joker, guys. He's a much flashier villain. And then if you want the third one, it's like, we can't go from that to just like, oh, it's a guy in a suit and stuff. Like, he's not particularly all that quirky or interesting. Yeah. But I think at the time they were just going on, because around when Mission Impossible 3 came out, and I remember everyone loved Philip Seymour Hoffman's performance in that as the villain. So I think they were just like, you should just do that in Batman. That should be the Penguin. It'd just be him doing that exact same performance. Yeah. But now he's wearing, I don't know, a monocle or something.
I'm sure there's some fan out there.
Oh, definitely.
But-
The thing is, I'd always imagine Philip Seymour Hoffman would have been better as the Riddler, because Hoffman always plays good, smug asshole very well. Again, tragically he did. But he always, and you see his version of Truman Capote and stuff. He has that sort of, there's a real smack of ego about him and stuff like that. And I always think that my preferred version of the Riddler is a guy who's just really, really smug and really wants to believe he is the smartest person in the room. And I can imagine Philip Seymour Hoffman doing that really, really well. But tragically, that will never happen now.
Oh.
But
Yeah, I would have been on board for that. Yeah, I agree with that.
We've talked about it, I think, once before, and we had trouble coming up with anyone else, really, that we would want to even see.
yeah, I know my pitch at the time was Toby Jones, and to play him as an upper crust aristocrat, so little Toby Jones going around with like a slightly longer nose and just having the cigarette holder and being very effete and looking down his nose at people, and get him to being an upper crust villain. But that was very much like he'd have to be like the secondary villain. He would not be the main threat. He couldn't, like, that character wouldn't be as interesting as Danny DeVito's Penguin, who can carry an entire film.
Right. And now you talked about your fandom for It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia way back in minute 20 with Gaz Flynn. And so I wanted to share that I live just outside Philadelphia, and I'm a huge fan of the show too, and Danny DeVito in it in particular. And as someone living near Philly, I can tell you that show is 100% accurate. Pretty much a documentary of her life.
Of everyone from Philly. You heard it here first.
And so even the title's accurate. Like, I'll be looking out my window over at Philadelphia. There'll be a storm on here, but you'll see the sun just beaming down in that city.
You can see Philly from Liverpool. And we're in England. It's always raining.
Yeah, it's perpetually raining in Liverpool.
Yeah,
is the English counterpart to that show.
In fact, let me look out the window. It's been raining.
No.
I thought you were going to go to the soundboard and like hit a rain sound effect for that.
No, we'll plug that in later.
Well, okay, so we talked about how this little speech of Max von Schreck's wins the Penguin over, and I especially enjoy this back and forth in like seconds 9 to 14 between DeVito and Walken, where they're doing that that is just, it makes me want a buddy movie with those two, like entirely centered on them.
Oh my god, going on like a road trip or something.
Exactly.
I want to see that.
So we were just saying in the previous minutes, like, it's how these two guys haven't worked together more frequently, because they have great rapport in all the scenes they're in. I was like, yeah, I would totally, watch Walken and DeVito in any movie, like a road movie together. I'd watch a movie just about Max Schreck and the Penguin doing this campaign together, like a little in-between movie. Like, yeah, this is an hour and a half of them planning out the speeches and stuff.
Hell yeah. I'd watch anything with either of these guys in, so if they're both in it, oh, I'm sold.
The next big DVD release of Batman Returns, they should at least do like an animated short and get them both to come back and do voiceover for it.
Yes. I think at least Danny DeVito would be up for that. Maybe not Christopher Walken, I'm not sure, but Danny would be like, yep. He might.
Walken is down in writing as saying if you pay him, he will be in anything. So yeah, they pay him, he'll totally do that.
And he also is clearly 100% in on the joke of who he is when he does these like comedic roles, and especially his cameos.
Oh yeah,
totally, yeah. And plus, I think DeVito has recently been saying that he wants to play the Penguin again. So, like, this is the prime opportunity. We should pitch it to those guys directly. Like, you don't understand, guys. There is a market here. No, at least 3 people who will definitely want to watch this thing if you guys make it.
I will buy out the whole theater on opening night just so I can watch it on my own. That's how much faith I have in it. I'll buy every ticket.
You're going to spend a lot of money just so you can be sitting alone in the theater?
That's bliss.
But even the skip ahead a few seconds, like when the penguin's walking away, I actually love the kind of buddiness he has. When he goes like, oh, I mustn't get sidetracked, Maxie. It's the fact that he calls him Maxie. Like these guys are friends now. Like, oh, me and Maxie, we hang out sometimes, and then. In fact, he's like, oh, no, I can't get distracted, Maxie. I just like the familiarity between them. Like, they are, the previous scene was all with them was like, yeah, it was Captor and Captee. But now it is like, no, these guys, they're friends. Like, they're on the same wavelength with each other.
I think we've got our
cute.
title, Maxie and the Penguin.
I've been calling him Pengy all movie. So it could be Maxie and Pengy.
Well, speaking of special features, I just want to cast my vote for more special episodes of Batminute. I really enjoyed your two-parter covered in purple rain with Dale and Omar.
That was fun.
So funny.
They're wonderful guests.
Yeah, I do think Dale's still recovering from Purple Rain, though, so I don't know if they were able to talk her into watching anything else but Batman again.
Her fury at being forced to watch that movie made my day.
But no, we have there's hiatus episodes between this season and next season. There's ideas been bandied about already, so don't you worry, there'll be stuff coming.
Nice.
But I don't know if it'll live up as well to Crystal Beth being forced into watching one of the worst movies of all time. I love you, Prince, wherever you are. But come on, what were you doing?
Yeah. But these guests were worked up into a foaming frenzy, which is much like what the Penguin is pitching to do to the mayor here. Poor Mayor Roscoe Jenkins. Just not even on screen to defend himself. But
well, something I love the Penguin doing here is when Max is proposing the plan, terrorizing the city, make the mayor look incompetent. Oswald is loving this idea so much. He's making these weird little sounds, like he kind of quacks. He's like,
oh yeah. So I was watching the minute over and over again, as you do, and I had to apologize to my wife like in advance, like, okay, I'm gonna listen to this minute over and over again, and I just want to apologize for the way Danny DeVito sounds, because you're gonna hear a lot of weird sounds.
It sounds like you're watching something very different.
It does one at the very end of the minute that I absolutely love, but we'll get to that in due time. But yeah, of course within the minute we have the Penguins getting on board with this, and it's like, oh, sounds fun, and because Shrek's won him over, but then of course he's like, no, mustn't get sidetracked, Maxie. I've got my own things to attend to. Which what we know now is like, yeah, he's planning to kill a bunch of kids.
Right.
That's the thing he has to attend to.
Don't distract me with your mayhem and murder plan. I've got my own mayhem and murder plan.
Yeah.
It's a very odd plot to come up with, like for the writers. It does feel kind of bolted together, these two, because it is just the Penguin's doing a scheme, and he gets distracted by this for a little bit, then goes back to his scheme.
Yeah, exactly. And I do. I wonder if this is actually is this Max's folly? Because you think Max Shrek would be a guy who would have got where he is by knowing all the angles, but he doesn't question this though. The Penguin, as far as he knows, that the Penguin only wanted to get up to reclaim his birthright and all this, etc., etc. And then he's saying he's turning down the chance to be mayor because he's got his own things to attend to. Would your first question not be, what are you doing? Like, what have you got planned that's better than me making you the mayor of the city? Is it just that the Shrek is not? He's just like, oh, this Penguin guy is nothing. I know. Like, and if he did know, if he knew he's planned to murder a bunch of children, would Max Shrek stop him? Or would he just be like, oh, you can do that later. Like, let's just do this thing first.
Well, since the firstborn of Gotham includes his own son.
Well, yeah, maybe he would be like, don't take Chip, but all the rest of the kids, you can go and do whatever you want.
That's a good point, actually. I hadn't thought about that. He can't be on board for that. That's a step too far, even for Max, surely. I know he tried to murder Selena and presumably other people, but taking out a whole city of children, that's crazy. It's insane.
It's a lot, to quote the Penguin. Yeah, it could be like, there could have been a scene like people have seen Paddington, where they have like Peter Capaldi's characters, like the blatant, they just stand in for your neighborhood racist. He just doesn't like this bear been in his neighborhood. But then as soon as he finds out Nicole Kidman's trying to kill the bear, he has a crisis of conscience. Like, oh, I don't want him to kill him. I just want him out of my neighborhood. So I wonder how palatable that would have been to have a scene of Shrek literally have a crisis of conscience of being like, okay, I have to stop this guy, rather than I just want to do what I'm doing so I can get my power plant, so I can basically hold the city to kind of ransom because I'll have all the power, or whatever his scheme is.
Couldn't someone else just come along and make another power plant, though? Like anyone else? Why does he have the power?
It's because he's got a capacitor that's sucking all the power out of the city and is storing it in his thing. So,
but someone could just
just come along and make a. Maybe that's step 2 of his thing. He'll have another guy, a proxy.
Oh,
maybe this is what he has another supervillain somewhere. He's working on like the Riddler. Have been like, oh no, you'll make this power plant over here once I've got this one built.
Well, I think what we're nibbling around the edges of is the big question. And I don't know if you have explored this in some of the earlier exchanges between the two when he was a captive, but who do you see as the villain of this movie? The Penguin or Max von Schreck?
That is a good question, because I've said a few times, the Penguin, he's a villain, but let's be honest, he's been treated so badly. Like from childhood onwards, you kind of understand him. Like he's got to have a lot of issues, a lot of hate in his heart, and the same for Selena. Like you can understand that. So Max has got to be the real evil.
Yeah, I'll say, and this will be in direct contention with what I know other people have said, because I know. Like Kevin Smith and Mark Menard, and they did a whole commentary on Batman Returns where they were just like, why is Max Schreck a character? Why is he here? He's so pointless. And considering those two guys are screenwriters, I was baffled because nothing in this film happens without Max Schreck. He is the main villain. Like, because the Penguin needs Max Schreck so he can get up to start his own scheme. So if there's no Max Schreck, the Penguin just he's kind of screwed. And if there's no Max Schreck, the Penguin doesn't run for mayor. And if there's no Max Schreck, Selena Kyle doesn't become Catwoman. And it's like, the guy is so integral to everything. And he is just a big venture capitalist evil guy out for himself. And his one saving grace is that he tries to save his own son. But even that is kind of self-serving, essentially, as well. So, yeah, I would say that the overarching villain, who doesn't get poster presence because he's not a weird penguin guy or anything, and it doesn't look as cool. But I would posit the main villain of the whole thing is Max Schreck, 100%.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's why I kind of like him not having that like crisis of conscience, like, oh wait, like the Penguin has this plan, maybe I should try to stop the plan. I kind of like it just being like he's already an evil character. Like you saw how he interacted with Selena and Kyle. He's misogynist, and then he's like a corrupt businessman, and then he's just willing to partner with this underworld sewer dwelling gangster character for his own means. And then it just kind of it goes farther than he probably thought that it would, but it's not him like there. It doesn't give him like this redemption thing where he ends up looking like the good guy, and instead it's kind of you see like a truer nature of evil coming out of him.
I'm glad about that. Too many movies they wouldn't be able to resist the urge to have a little turn in his character in the last sort of third of the film. Or at least in the last scene with him in, he tries to do the good thing at the end of the day. No, I don't want that. He's evil.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
and I agree also that the Penguin is tragic. Like he's a monster and he does monstrous things, like bite someone's nose off their face, and it's just like really gross in the like way that he talks about women. but you like kind of see how life has twisted him, and I think that carries through to the way that they treat him without spoiling the end of the movie. There's always like this kayfabe that you have to do on a Movies by Minute podcast, assuming that people haven't seen the movie and talking like you haven't seen the movie. But
you get a startling amount of people listening who they've seen it, granted, but they say, I haven't seen it in years. I don't really remember it, but they still listen anyway, which is weird to me. Watch the film. But no, please keep listening. Either way, don't stop. But the end, that last shot at the end, without saying too much, backs up everything you're saying. You're supposed to kind of feel for him. Definitely.
Again, even if you link that all in with like, well, if the main villain of this film is a rich white guy, a real rich white asshole who has too much power. You consider who were the people who created the Penguin were rich white people who just threw their baby away. So like, there is a very much like it's all pointing in one direction as to who the real crooks in this world are.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Penguin's parents, we have Penguin about to ascend up his little spiral staircase. And Shrek talking about reclaiming what these parents so thoughtlessly threw away. And then the Penguin does again mention this business of like, oh, reclaim my birthright, you mean? And we discovered in previous minutes that apparently Tucker Cobblepot was a DA. And that's why he was so rich apparently. Because apparently the DA is a really rich guy. But the thing is, he said birthright. If you're the DA's kid, does that mean you have a birthright to run for public office? Is that is that the indication? Or
I didn't know the part about him being a DA. And
well, it's very subtly placed. I only found it through a replica you can buy of the newspaper where it says when they're talking about the Penguin, his father Tucker Cobblepot was a DA and his mother was in the DAR. So it is in there, but it's not in the plot of the movie. It's just sort of like, yeah, if you're watching it, if you're analyzing it a minute at a time and you're doing the research, you will discover that that's what apparently he was supposed to be. But the normal people would not have even been slightly close to that information.
I had no clue until we did this. I just assumed, he's like maybe a businessman, or you just like a blue blood, so he doesn't even work. Maybe he just owns property and has a mansion. He doesn't do anything.
That was my read too. He's got the top hat and the monocle, and he's drinking a martini. And so I thought reclaiming his birthright just meant like being a part of high society.
Yeah, yeah. I still think that's what he means by it, even though we've discovered the DA thing, because that's not a birthright. Like that's not a monarchy.
Yeah, there could be a little bit of nepotism though. Like even you see it in the White House administration. It's like you had George Bush Sr. and then when his son runs for president, it seems to be like, he's kind of got like a, he's already had a foot in the door. And then even with Hillary running, it's like, well, her husband was the president, so of course she's qualified to do this, and et cetera, et cetera. So maybe there is a little bit of, when you're in a campaign, it's implied that because you come from this stock of people, therefore you're more qualified for the job, I guess. But of course, though, growing up in a sewer and stuff, you wouldn't assume that he would. That doesn't mean and anyway, beyond the fact that he has biological connections, does not give him any kind of right to claim any public office. But
you didn't exactly benefit from the social connections that come from your family when you're separated by them and you live in the sewer, and your friends are carnival freaks. But you were talking about like the Penguin ascending his spiral staircase, and I wanted to give a shout out just to the blocking and the camera work of that whole kind of second 30 to second 43 of Max von Schreck's trying to convince him of the plan, and then the Penguin kind of remembers his own nefarious scheme. So they were like talking one-on-one, and then the Penguin says, but wait, mustn't get distracted. And then he starts to walk away, and you see him kind of being pulled away and up the spiral staircase. And then Max von Trapp has to follow him. So it really kind of shows the tension between like, oh wait, he's losing him, and then he's really got to pour it on and kind of win him back. And then when he mentions, sorry if you're hearing jangling, my pit bull Jack Bow Wow is in the room with me because it's the sunniest spot. I asked him to be quiet, but he's not. Yep, shake it off. Yep. But what was I saying? Oh, he mentions the penguin's family and his birthright, and then you get a little bit of Elfman's penguin theme in there. I love that.
Yes, and he's lured him back, hasn't he? He's like a fish on a fishing line. There, he's winding him in, almost literally. They're getting closer again.
Yeah, it's almost like a boxing match as well, because he goes like, "Oh, the birthright, that's got him," and then he has a 3-punch system of you could get the ear of the media, and the penguin's like, "Oh, whatever." And then like, oh, access to captains of industry, whatever. And then unlimited poontang. And then, which then of course, one of my favorite reactions of anything ever is that the penguin going, like the realization of like, oh, that's done it. Yeah, that's one.
Not to mention, well, first of all, like I hate that expression.
Oh, who says that? Who uses that word?
So gross.
I've actually looked up the etymology of poontang because I myself was curious. And actually, it's a slightly classier origin than I originally had anticipated. Apparently, again, this whole week's gonna have to be like not safe for work, basically. But it has here, poontang, sex with a woman regarded as a sex object, female genitalia. These are the definitions. 1910 of uncertain origin, probably via New Orleans Creole, because it comes from the French putain, which means prostitute, and the Old French pute, which means whore, and then it's also the vulgar Latin is putus for girl, and then Latin putans, pure, bright, splendid. But then it even goes on. They seem to have, like, because they just don't know an exact one. It says, but possibly also from or influenced by Old French or from Latin putus, meaning, or putidus, meaning stinking, on the notion of foulness, of harlotry, or for more literal reasons, like, it just says, and from the shortened form of poon has been recorded since 1969. For some reason, though, I always associated with, and I think it might be because it's in a load of war movies, I kind of associated it with Vietnam as well, because I don't know if I've heard people in war movies say poontang and then heard Da Nang, so I assumed it came from Vietnam in some way. Maybe it was a term for like a Vietnamese prostitute or something, but again, that was back when I made no effort to look into what it actually meant. But now we know. So,
well, thank you for doing that research. Now I actually hate it more, and I don't want to know what that little bit of research is going to do to your Google search algorithm.
just burn the computer now. Get rid of your Google account as well.
I think that too. But the thing, because I said like, oh, it's a little bit classier, was the fact that it was French. That was the only classy part of the entire thing.
What really tickles me about that moment in this minute is after he says that, there's like a little, it's like a little bell that rings, or like a little chime, as like the light bulb goes on over Penguin's head, and that I just love that they're willing to be that cartoony.
Yeah, because it's even the Elfman score gets a little bit close to dangerously whimsical. So it has a little like dun 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 ding. It's very, very playful, but it works though, because it is a flat out comedic scene. Like, you're supposed to take that as been like, we're not trying to hide it from you. This is a funny thing that he has been won over by the promise of poontang.
Can I also just point out, like, it doesn't seem very in Max's character to use that word. I don't think. Why that choice of words? Is it?
I think it's a direct continuation from what we were discussing last minute, because remember, he was pitching away to the penguin, and he was all like, "Oh, French flipper trick," and then it was all, as soon as he went into his little fantasy of being mayor, he went for, "Oh, that's the I need you, Oswald," and all this business. So Shrek has clearly just gone, this guy. Clearly, all he wants is sex.
Yes, he's got a read on him, and you can even see in just before he delivers that line, like, he looks over his shoulder, like, is anybody going to hear me say this? and then back. I'm actually doing those movements now. Yeah, I know what a podcast is, so I know no one can see me. So, but it's just instinct. But you know what? So it's like this conspiratorial, like gross, like locker room talk vibe to the way that he does it. That's his way of getting an in with the Penguin.
Yeah,
well, I suppose
totally.
he's trying to manipulate him. So yeah, use his language. Like he probably thinks, well, this is the way he might talk. So I'll do the same thing. I'll meet him on his level, which is it's a good skill to have when you have to deal with people all day every day. I do this at work. I don't say the word poontang. But you talk in different ways to different people. You get a read on them and go, oh, okay, they'll appreciate this sort of way of speaking.
I was going to say, John, are you saying your job is being an arch villain?
Well, I don't like to talk about it too much, but yeah, I ran for mayor. I became the mayor of Liverpool, and I am evil. I'm an evil mayor.
You're nowhere near as cool as that mayor from Sheffield we talked about in the last episode.
Yeah. He is a god.
But I do love, though, slightly different in the finished script, because it does have the unlimited poontang line is there. But it just says then Penguin quickly decides, and he just goes, I want to be the mayor. I want to be the mayor of Gotham City. Which in itself is funny, but I actually do prefer the kind of pause of, like, the reaction of, and then the kind of look of, like, realization. And then it's like, oh, you drive a hard bargain, Maxie. Like, it's even sleazier, and it's like, it's not quite as silly. It's like, it just works beautifully. In that script, they do have a little minor line that we should bring up, because we talked about this is a campaign office, yet somehow the Red Triangle Gang is also using it as a base for operations. And it does actually have a line here where it says, Max tells the Penguin, they must come and go via the plumbing ducts that I've provided. That should be as sacred as the separation between church and state. So it seems to be... Line. Yeah, it was just, I guess it's a little just about, they're like, yep, that's how they're getting. And in fact, the Shrek has planned this so at advance already that he specifically put in these ducts that would be, I guess, will be able to get the Red Triangle Gang in and out of the building.
That's amazing.
And you think, though, you just get a different building. Just, like, put them in a different house. What the hell?
Yeah, why do they have to be there? Clearly, this is a world with telephones. We've seen them.
Yeah, plus the upstairs isn't that nice. Like, it's like, get them into, like, a nice little, like, a little condo somewhere or something. I guess maybe the Penguin just likes it this way, but... they maybe Max again. Maybe this is how you save money. It's like, well, of course I'm not going to give him a home and a campaign center. It's going to be the one damn building. I'm not made of money. Well, I am, but this is how I stay made of money.
I would love it if someone posted an image in your Facebook group of like a sketch of the campaign headquarters / Red Triangle Gang hangout and connection to the sewer. I actually want like a model playset of the whole thing.
That would be amazing. Why didn't that exist?
I can imagine, though, them pitching that to Kenner have been like, it's a campaign headquarters with a room with these guys on top. And they're like, I don't know, is there like those plumbing ducts they can come in and out of that aren't mentioned in the finished movie, but they're in the script? And Kenner have been like, This Batmobile comes apart, right? I think that's what we need to concentrate on. But again, Jarf, because I know you're on the clock. I think you said you need to be out in under an hour, and we're nearly at nearly at the hour mark in terms of since we started the call. So, is there anything you guys about this particular minutes that you want to? Anything else we've not covered? Do you want to throw in or?
No, I don't think so. I think we nailed it.
Yeah, it's just that usually at this time, we'd always ask the guests as well if they have a particular history with this film or a history with Batman. Like, do you remember seeing this movie for the first time? And was there any story behind it, or?
You know, it's funny. I remember seeing Batman '89 for the first time very clearly, and like the mania over it that summer, and wearing the Joker T-shirt with like the laughter and his like wringing his hands in his hair, and what a hit that was on the boardwalk. All of that. I don't remember seeing Batman Returns as a kid clearly that way. I'd say that was a time when I wasn't seeing a lot of movies in the theater, and I would wait till a lot of them came out on well, I'll show my age, VHS. But
Don't worry, I think that was me with every movie then.
Oh, really? And then like the later movies, like Batman and Robin, I remember seeing those in the theater. It's for some reason this one is a blip, but like I said at the top, it is one of my favorites of like comic book adaptations of all time. I just think it's incredible. I love the kind of triptych of like Batman, Catwoman, and the Penguin, and like their animal motifs, and the like mixture of like weirdness and grossness and silliness, and Catwoman's amazing. So a lot of fun talking about it. A lot of fun to like talking about these, two great comedians really just going for it and hamming it up with their characters. So again, like I appreciate you both having me on, and I look forward to listening to the rest of the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been great having you. Would you like to tell our listeners where they can find anything in particular that you're involved in online, or where they could get in touch with you, anything like that?
Sure thing. So I co-created the Cosmic Geppetto podcast with my friend and former radio DJ partner back in college, Otter, aka Brad, and we bring like creators, musicians, or just comic book and geeky culture fans on to like talk about their work, talk about pop culture. So we really cover like the gamut of fandom, and I'm particularly interested in hearing from like women, people of color, about work that doesn't get as much of the spotlight within geek culture. So that show is a lot of fun. And then folks can follow me on Instagram at Jarf Harden.
Ah, cool. Do make sure to check that out, everyone. It's a great show. And if you want to get in touch with us, we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. Leave us a review on iTunes as well. That's always a lovely thing to do. And we will be back. Niall, this is Friday's episode, is it?
This is, yes, Friday.
We will be back on Monday with more Bat Minute Returns. See you then.
Next time, Dismal Inferno. A putrid politician sets things to burn, baby burn, prompting Gotham's fate to take a tempestuous turn. But can a petrifying pet turned TNT-toting hound be halted by a heroic crime hunter who's street trouble bound? Find out next week. Same Bat Pod, different Bat Minute.